Donald Trump just dropped a bombshell that changes the entire energy map of the world, claiming that India is officially dumping its old ally Iran to buy oil from Venezuela instead. This isn't just a business deal. This is a massive geopolitical pivot that could redefine India's standing in the Middle East and its relationship with the United States. While the media is focused on the political noise, there is a much darker, much more complex game being played in the shadows involving sanctions, secret diplomacy, and the survival of the Indian economy. Today, we are going to connect the dots that Washington and Beijing don't want you to see. To understand why this statement from Donald Trump is so dangerous and yet so brilliant, you have to look at the map of the Middle East. Look at the Strait of Hormuz, right there at the bottom of Iran. For decades, India relied on Iran not just for cheap oil, but as a strategic gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia through the Chabahar port. Iran was a friend, a civilizational neighbor. But there is a problem. The United States has placed a chokehold on the Iranian economy and by extension, anyone who does business with them. For years, India walked a tightrope. We bought Iranian oil because it was cheap and because our refineries are suited for it. But when the US sanctions hit hard, India had to zero out its imports from Tehran. It was a painful decision. It cost us billions. Now, fast forward to this week. Donald Trump, speaking with that characteristic bluntness, says the quiet part out loud. He claims a deal is done. He claims India is coming in to buy Venezuelan oil explicitly instead of Iranian oil. Think about the timing. Why now? And why Venezuela? This is where we need to look at the other side of the world, at South America. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia. But just like Iran, Venezuela has been under crushing US sanctions for years. Their economy is in ruins, their infrastructure is rusting. So why would America, which hates the Venezuelan regime, suddenly encourage India to buy from them? This is real politics at its finest. The United States knows it cannot stop India from buying oil. We are the third largest consumer in the world. If we don't buy from the West, we buy from Russia. We have proven that. So, the US strategists are calculating. They would rather have India buy oil from Venezuela, which is in the American hemisphere, than from Iran, which funds proxies against Israel and US interests in the Middle East. If India buys from Venezuela, two things happen. One, Iran gets isolated further. It loses one of its biggest potential customers forever. Two, Venezuelan oil flows into the market, stabilizing global prices, which helps the American economy during an election cycle. Trump frames this as a win for America, saying, "We made a deal." But is it really a win for them, or is it a masterstroke by New Delhi? Let's look at the technical reality. Indian refineries, specifically the complex ones like Reliance in Jamnagar, are some of the best in the world. They are designed to process heavy crude. Heavy crude is thick, sludgy, and difficult to refine, but it is cheap. Guess who has the most heavy crude in the world? Venezuela. Guess who else? Iran. When India stopped buying from Iran, our refineries were starving for this heavy crude. We had to buy expensive alternatives or rely heavily on Russian Urals, which is a different grade. By shifting to Venezuela, India solves a massive technical problem. We get the heavy oil we need at a discount without angering the Americans. In fact, we are doing it with America's blessing. But here's the twist, the layer that most analysts are missing. This isn't just about oil, this is about leverage. Trump's statement implies that he controls this flow. He says, "We made a deal." He's taking credit for India's foreign policy. This is a classic pressure tactic. By announcing it publicly, he backs India into a corner. If New Delhi denies it, we look like we are defending Iran. If we accept it, it looks like we are following orders from Washington. However, the reality on the ground is different. Reports indicate that the Venezuelan leadership, specifically Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, has already been in direct contact with Prime Minister Modi. They discussed energy, trade, and investment. This means India wasn't waiting for permission. India was already negotiating directly with Caracas. Trump is merely trying to put his stamp on a process that Indian diplomats started months ago. And we must address the hypocrisy check. Look at how the West behaves. Europe continues to buy energy where it can. The US buys uranium from Russia when it needs to. Yet, they lecture the global South on morality. When India buys Russian oil, we are told we are funding a war. But when the US wants to isolate Iran, suddenly buying oil from the dictatorship in Venezuela is perfectly fine. It shows you that there are no permanent enemies in geopolitics, only permanent interests. The US hates Maduro in Venezuela, but they hate the Ayatollahs in Iran more, and they need India to help balance that equation. This brings us to the India angle. What does this mean for us? Strategically, this is a win, but a risky one. By moving to Venezuela, India diversifies its energy basket. We are already buying record amounts from Russia. Now, if we add Venezuela, we are less dependent on the volatile Middle East. If a war breaks out between Israel and Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is closed, Indian tankers coming from Venezuela across the Atlantic Ocean are safe. They don't have to pass through the war zone. That is a massive security upgrade for our energy needs. But we must be careful not to alienate Iran completely. Iran is not just an oil pump, it is our route to the international north-south transport corridor. It is a counterweight to Pakistan. If we completely dump Iran, as Trump suggests, we risk pushing Tehran completely into the arms of China, and that is a nightmare scenario for Indian security. China is already building ports in Pakistan. If they take over Chabahar in Iran because India left, we will be encircled. So, while the oil deal with Venezuela is a masterstroke for our economy, the diplomatic messaging needs to be handled with extreme caution. We must buy the oil, but we must not let Trump dictate the narrative that we have abandoned our independent foreign policy. We are buying Venezuelan oil because it suits India, not because it pleases America. In conclusion, this news is a signal that the global energy order is fracturing. The old rules don't apply. India is playing a multi-aligned game, buying from Russia, negotiating with Venezuela, and maintaining ties with the West, all while keeping a wary eye on the Middle East. Now, for the question of the day. I want you to answer this in the comments. Venezuela was a founding member of OPEC, the organization that controls oil prices. But in recent years, which country has overtaken Venezuela to become the world's largest producer of oil? Is it Saudi Arabia, Russia, or the United States? Let me know your answer below. This is a developing story, and as the tankers change course, so will the politics. Stay tuned.